have here with me Mr. Pela, who is the Labour Party candidate for the gubernatorial election in Delta State. Nice to meet you, sir.
Nice to be here.
Now, you're here at Njenje Media TV, and what's your take regarding where in Lagos, again here, sadly, one of the councillors or one of the leaders are calling that people vote APC or they will cease doing their businesses in Lagos. So when you hear such audio messages of meetings that they are having, trying to discourage people from voting, how do you feel?
You know, when people have the choice between the devil and the deep blue sea, you know, how do you beat people who have their backs to the wall? Okay, that's where we are getting to. We're getting to the point where Nigerians have their backs to the wall. They either die or they fight. That's where we are. I was asked the question once in one of the interviews whether what would happen if Peter Obi does not win. And I said that's not a question that we can contemplate, considering what's happening, considering the mood of the nation. But I also said that if it did happen by any chance that he wouldn't win or he didn't win, we will have a change in Nigeria irrespective in 2023. We will have a change because the mood of the people is one where there's so much hope that's been built. And if those hopes are dashed, I fear what will happen. Nigeria will cease to exist.
If we move away from the national politics and come back to Delta State, where you intend to govern, and by the grace of God, you will become the governor of the state.
Amen.
Over the last couple of years, we have had James Ibori, we have had Uduagan, we have now also have Dr. Okowa. These are men who governed Delta State as PDP candidates. Do you think, or rather rephrasing, what are the chances that you are able to take power away from the staunch PDP state that have governed at least now, cumulatively, over the last
24 years.
24 years?
Yes. Yes, PDP has been, like you said, staunchly, Delta has been staunchly PDP for 24 years. In that time, our people have seen their fortunes go from good to bad to worse. And they realize that if it's allowed to continue, it will get worse, for lack of a better word. The people are ready for change. I started my local government tours a few days ago, about a week now. And you need to see the excitement on the faces of people. The excitement on the faces of people who had lost hope, but they're beginning to see hope. Now, that hope starts from the national level. They've seen hope in the man, Peter Obi. And they believe that Nigeria is going to move from where it is, or where it's been, to a better place. We're going to have a better Nigeria. Now, that hope has led to excitement across the land and a hope for change. Now, a lot of things are coming together. There's the hope of Peter Obi. It's driven by the beavers that has given hope that for once, elections, the results of the elections or the votes will count. That combined is giving hope to people in Delta that having been held in bondage, so to speak, for 24 years by, for lack of a better word, a cult that they can make a change. Now, unfortunately, or fortunately, another factor that is coming in is infighting within the PDP. If the PDP had remained as one, it probably would have been difficult. But today you have the PDP broken into various segments. And I say that in Delta, we don't have the PDP and the APC. We have what you would call PDP 1 and PDP 2. The fight is for who will control the resources of the state. And the people realize that. The people realize that it is Otapiapia and was it
Sniper.
You know, they realize that. So they're looking for an alternative. And that alternative is the Labour Party and Pela as governor. So they're beginning to realize that. Now, I haven't been too visible for strategic reasons. Because if you understand the politics of Delta, you would realize that you need to be very careful about certain things. And so I'm beginning to become more visible. I had always told people that I'm going to run a sprint. The sprint has started. I wasn't ready for a marathon. The sprint has started, and I'm beginning to become more visible. And I am very certain we'll catch up by the first elections on February 25th. We'll catch up with the leading candidates, and by the time we get into the governorship election, we'll overtake them and win that election.
That is Delta State. In the last 24 years, many of us would consider it a misgoverned state. We may be wrong, but it's subject to further scrutiny. It's one of those states that receives the most from the federal government in terms of allocations. But sadly, in our view, that there is nothing or not much to show for it. The PDP in the last 24 years have governed your state. Question then for you is, how do you rate the PDP governance in the last 24 years? And what will you do differently as a departure from what the PDP has been doing in the last 24
years? All right. When I spoke earlier, I said we've gone from good. I would say the 8 years of Ibori, because we were coming from military rule to civilian rule, we were all elated to receive that change. So I would say it was good because we saw a lot of change, we saw a lot of improvements, we had a lot of infrastructural development. But the biggest problem was that we didn't plan for the future, all right? And then we went from good to bad to worse. The problem has been visionless leadership. It's been leadership, transactional leadership, that has lived by the day, lived just for today. And you did say that we earned the highest allocation in Nigeria as of today. And there's nothing to show for it. Or, as you put it, there's not much to show for it. Compare us to River State, okay? River State has, let me take the last 8 years in particular the last 4 years. There's been a lot of transformation in that state in terms of infrastructural development that you will not even believe that you are in a Nigerian state sometimes. Now, that could have changed significantly because it's not a case of the resources not there. You used the right word. It's been a misgoverned state. There's been a mismanagement of our resources, for lack of a better word. Now we've earned, I remember making this point years ago. I think it was towards the tail end of Ibori's government. And at the time, our budget for Delta was about 150 billion. And they would talk with glee about how the the recurrent budget was more than half of the total budget. And at the time I wondered, at that time it was about 80 billion. And I asked the question, Donald Duke in Cross River at the time, his total budget was 39 billion. All right? And he was able to do capital expenditure and recurrent expenditure and do great things in Cross River at the time. And I wondered, why? Now, the story has not changed. As at 2019, the budget was about 400 billion. 60% of that was recurrent expenditure. All right? Over 200 billion was spent on recurrent. Now, compare that to Borno State, whose budget was less than 200 billion. Okay? And so I ask my people the question, if you own a company and your managers are using twice, 3 times, 4 times what others are spending for recurrent expenditure to do the same things, because that is pure waste. In 2019, miscellaneous expenses was over 80 billion. All right, so there's been mismanagement of resources, there's been waste and corruption. It's made a world of difference to what could have been done. Now you asked, what would I do differently? I'll provide visionary leadership. Visionary leadership, that's where the difference is. There's a clear vision of where I want to take Delta to. I want to build a better Delta where righteousness, harmony, and prosperity reigns. And when I talk about righteousness, and I tell people that that vision is deeply rooted in the vision for Peter Obi for Nigeria, that is from consumption to production. And when I tell them the vision for Delta, they wonder, how does righteousness, harmony, and prosperity mean the same thing as from consumption to production? First of all, we'll enthrone righteousness. Righteousness here simply means doing the right thing. We will enthrone accountability and integrity in governance. We'll eliminate waste and corruption in governance. We'll enthrone fairness, equity, and justice. We'll reorientate the values of our people. Today, I mean, from where we were coming when we were young, success was a result of hard work. People who were rich because of commerce and industry. All right? Now, all you need to be rich is to be in government. Okay, we've got to reorientate the minds and the values of our people. We'll encourage mass participation in governance. We believe that when we put those things in place, we will create a situation where there will be peace and harmony. And when you put those two together, you will engender prosperity. You would have a situation where prosperity will thrive.
Okay.
Now, let me just finish on the vision. Now, we are going to engender prosperity with 8 key prosperity drivers. Okay. The first is that we'll pay a living wage. We will progressively increase the minimum wage from 30,000.
So how are you going to finance that?
Finance. I just said that recurrent expenditure is 80 billion. I mean, it's over 200 billion. But when you look at that, 80 billion of that was wasted.
Is that monthly
miscellaneous.
or annually?
Annually. 80 billion of that was miscellaneous expenditure. All right? We will cut waste and corruption. All right? And that is part of what we'll use to finance what I'm talking about. But we're not just going to do that. We're going to bake a bigger cake. As it is today, part of the problem is reliance on basically the income that is allocated, the allocation that we get, and some level of internally generated revenue. When we boost the economy, that revenue will quadruple. All right, will increase by 10 times. And that's why I was going to give you the 8 key prosperity drivers. The second thing is that we would ensure financial autonomy for the local governments. As of today, and it's not just Delta, for most of the states, you have a situation where there's a toll gate at the state level for funds coming to the local governments. The funds don't get to them. we'll ensure those funds get to the local governments in full, and we will increase the capacity, the quality of the people that would work in those local governments or that would lead those local governments, and use them as engines and drivers of growth. The third thing we would do is use our gas resources. As of today, Delta State is, before that, the third thing is a social investment scheme that we have in mind. Now, through that scheme, we intend to empower, I don't like using that word empower, but for lack of a better word, we intend to give 100 people in every local government every month the sum of 1 million naira in interest-free loans payable over 4 years. All right, in every local government, 25 local governments, that will amount to 120 billion naira over a period of 4 years. For women and youths, some men, people who are interested in starting new businesses, in growing their existing businesses, and that will boost the economy of Delta.
So how are you going to fund?
Again,
I need
funding.
to keep interjecting here because
Yes.
funding, politicians do promise a lot of
Yes.
things, but funding is something that must be considered. How do you fund it?
Yes. Now, what I just pointed out, 25, that is 2.5 billion a month. Okay? Times 3 would be, times 12 would be about 30 billion. A little over 30 billion. That is 1/3 of what is currently being spent on miscellaneous items. Okay? We believe that by the time we cut waste and corruption, we'll be able to fund some of these things. Okay? Now, the fourth thing is, I talked about power and gas utilization. To bring, gas utilization to produce power. We intend to have 24-hour power driven by the private sector. My background, one of the companies I run is a power company. All right, we provide captive power for industries in the Ota area. One of the biggest problems to power in Nigeria is transmission. There's a concept of distributed generation. Delta State has 40% of Nigeria's gas resources spread across various areas of the state. We would provide, working with private sector, provide turbines, mini gas plants in each, various localities to drive power utilization.
What is exclusively reserved for the federal government?
No, if not, the Power Act changed a lot of things. If not, we wouldn't be doing captive power in Ota. That is the excuse people give when they don't want to do anything. And in the middle of that excuse, Edo State just began to generate 90 megawatts for their people. All right? So people that are lazy, don't want to do anything, will give you the excuse, oh, it's exclusive. No. The new Power Act that came on stream since 2015 gives a lot of, a lot of room for a lot of things to happen. Now, we intend to develop 10 new cities. 10 new cities, one in each federal constituency, again driven by the private sector. My background is real estate. Okay, I am an economist. I became an investment banker. I left investment banking and went to real estate development. All right, so we intend to develop 10 new cities. Now, those 10 new cities would have, there will be agro-industrial base. All right, we'll provide the enabling environment for industries that are based on the factor endowment of each of those areas to thrive, and invite them to be able to come and they will be well-planned cities with everything required for. What made Dubai what it is? It's not built totally by the wealth of Dubai. It's because an enabling environment was created for investors to come. I tell people that why would someone not want to come and build a 40-story building in Warri, for example? One major problem is what they will do with their waste. All right, so we will provide those cities with central sewage, and the waste that comes from those places will be used, in plants to provide fertilizer that will grow our agric economy. Another thing we will do will be social housing. All right. Now, those people in those places will be providing easy to access homes, okay, backed by mortgage finance. So the people that are being encouraged, with financing to grow their industry and all that, will be encouraged to get homes that they can pay over a period of time. And then we will revive moribund industries and revive our seaports. By the time we put all this together, we will be able to build a state where the economy will thrive and our people will live a better life.
Now, P2B normally says that if you haven't created wealth, you can't manage wealth.
True,
Now,
very true.
In selling yourself to the people of Delta State, for those who may not know your pedigree, how have you created wealth that will lead them believe that you are going to manage the enormous wealth within Delta State?
All right. Like I said earlier, I studied economics and then became an investment banker. Investment banking is a branch of banking where you create, where you create things from nothing, where you identify, when you have a company that has a problem, you find what the problems are and you solve those problems. I have created wealth all my life. From investment banking, I became a real estate developer, creating new cities from nothing. And then after that, I also invested in power. Like I told you, I'm chairman, chief executive of a company that does power for industries in the Ota area of Lagos. All right. And I'm also involved in a company that does agric mechanization. We brought back John Deere to Nigeria after over 30 years, 2003. And we currently are in the business of providing tractors for farmers, mostly in the northern area of Nigeria. So I have created wealth. I've been involved in creating wealth from nothing. And like he says, a lot of the problems that we have is that we've had people who have never done that, who have never created wealth. And you give them the wealth of the country. There's no rocket science. They would waste it. Okay? So the future requires people who have created wealth, who know how to create wealth, to be able to do something about it.
You mentioned a while ago that you are going to create new cities. Sitting down listening to you, you talk about creating new cities. It appears to be what every politician will say during campaign, I'll create new cities. Yet the state capital, in most cases, is nothing to write home about. If one is not able to create or reinvigorate a state capital, how then do you create a city? By creating a city, do you mean building 10 estates? So how do you explain to the people of Delta
creating new cities?
Creating new cities, and how should they understand what that means?
One big problem in Delta today is there's no master plan for Delta. And so you have unplanned developments, huge slums. Warri is growing into Agbaro. Agbaro is growing into Ogeli. Okay? Warri is grown into Efrun. Efrun is growing into Saple. And that's what's basically happening. Now, when I talk about creating new cities, new developments, okay, where you would have everything required for modern and comfortable living from scratch. All right? From scratch. Now, we believe that by the time we are creating those new cities, all right, people in the older cities, the older places will begin to move to those ones because there will be everything required 24-hour electricity, there will be ease, there will be security, and so on. The way we see it in a place like Lagos,
But that to me, sorry, but that to me sounds like creating new estates.
no, this is bigger than estates.
So new
And
city means these cities will emerge with new name, new
so I'll
numbering.
give you an example.
Okay.
I would give you a video that you would look at. We had conceptualized one for my federal constituency, okay, a few years ago, and it's called Otorukbe. Okay, Otorukbe means the land of light. My local government is where the Otorogu gas plant is, and the gas resources that can be used to produce electricity. All right, so it will start as a power island. There will be areas mapped out for industry. There will be areas mapped out for farmland, depending on the area. If you go to the northern axis, the Kwale axis of Delta, you will see a lot of land between there and the Isoko area. You see a lot of land that can be used for agriculture. So I'm not limiting it to estates. An estate typically you would look at would just be houses. Housing units.
So
we're going to go beyond housing units. We will build housing units. Okay, there will be provision for farmlands. There will be provision for industry. There will be provision for recreation. All right, so it will be self-contained cities where you can live, work, and play. All right, there will be huge developments, much bigger than estates.
You know, listening to you talk about this, it brings to mind the fanfare, including myself, with which Delta State Airport assignment was received. Now, today, that airport appears not to be in sync with the idea with which it was created, and appears not to be offering, in my estimation, the people of Delta that needed service. Because I recall there was a time when Virgin Nigeria was still operational. You could actually fly from London, stop over in Lagos, the same flight, or they change you over, takes you to Asaba. Mm-hmm. So what happened? It appears that the airport is going downhill. My question then to you would be, if and when you are elected the governor of Delta State, what will you do to see that that airport comes back to what it ought to be?
Okay, I like that you corrected yourself when you said if. Usually, I have to correct the interviewer because it's when. Now, one of the biggest problems we've had in this country, like I said, is visionless leadership. Plans are produced and given to the leader. The man doesn't know what that plan means. He doesn't know the effect of that plan on the economy of the state, for example. And typically what would happen is that transaction. They would see that proposal as a transaction. What is in this for me? So the proposals come, and rather than driving it based on how it affects the state, it becomes an avenue for self-aggrandizement. The amount of money that has been spent on the Asaba airport is ridiculous. Right? And the problem is simply that how does this affect the economy of the state is never thought of. It is how this thing will be a conduit for whatever their plans are. Now, if you notice, my plan is a holistic plan. Okay? One thing I didn't mention is that those 10 new cities will be served by intermodal transport. The whole idea is to create a place where people would rather want to come and do business. Okay? And because it's a vision that it's not something that my people are giving to me. It's a vision that I have. All right? And everything is linked together. How one will affect the other is all linked together. It is something that will have the political will to pursue. The airport is a key factor in putting this together. The plan was to have an airport in Warri working and an airport in Asaba working, so that you have two cities, one in the north, one in the south, where people could easily fly into and out of. Okay, the reason it didn't work, I have said. It will work in our time because it will be part of the whole plan to build a delta, a better delta, where righteousness, harmony, and prosperity reigns.
To conclude this interview with you this evening, I would want to know, obviously you have highlighted, because when I asked my previous question, you highlighted 8 points, which I assume are the 8 points within your campaign manifesto.
Yes.
Now, but here in summary and in conclusion, why would Delta people vote for you and not the APC or PDP candidate?
Okay. I said earlier that we've had 24 years of wasted opportunity. Today, during the town hall meeting, somebody made a point and asked the question, how old were you 8 years ago? Add 8 years to your life. Can we afford another 8 years of waste? We know the pedigree of the people leading the APC and the PDP. We know the pedigree of their candidates. I also said earlier that what we are faced with is the choice between Otapiapia and Sniper. I also said that as of today, we don't have PDP and APC in Delta. We have PDP 1 and PDP 2. They are one and the same. They are led by people from the same stock. As it is today, the fight between them is who will continue to control and steal our resources. I believe I am giving Deltans an option to move away from the past of waste, to move away from the options where we'll continue to slide, like His Excellency Dati Ahmed will say, it is time to stop the slide and start the climb. We need to stop the slide in Delta. Pela, I have a background. Now, this election, like Peter Obi would say, shouldn't be about whose turn it is. Shouldn't be about where you're from. Shouldn't be about ethnicity or any. It should be about character, competence, capacity, and the commitment to deliver. I believe that if you put us all in a scale, you will find me high, head and shoulders above all the rest on those 4 characteristics. So Deltans, do not make the mistake. Vote for one with a vision. Vote for one with a clear roadmap to take Delta to build a better Delta where righteousness, harmony, and prosperity reigns. There's no other alternative.
Thank you very much for being my guest this evening.